So live.
So live. I want to see. I don't know why. I want to see Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. It has very much has a Fifth Element because it's the same director.
Yeah, right. No, it's got his stamp all over it.
But I want to see it. There's something about it. And this is interesting. I don't care about the plot. I'm very interested in the world because that was the thing about the Fifth Element was the world building that they did with it. I thought was very, very compelling, and I think that's one of the things that gets lost when they do a lot of these, not genre movies, but adaptation movies like the Marvel, DC, Star Trek. Toward the later movies, is that?
Do you hear Rainn Wilson's going to be in Star Trek Discovery, the TV show?
Which one's Rainn Wilson?
He's the guy from The Office.
Yes, I know that.
He's
yes.
gonna play. He's gonna play Harry Mudd, the Tribbles guy.
You know what? He'd be perfect for it. He'd be perfect for it.
Harcourt Fenton Mudd.
I like Rain.
He's good.
But the world, the like having a living, breathing. I think that's one of the things that made Guardians of the Galaxy so fun was the world that they inhabited. Right? Like if it was a standard kind of like gang heist, we gotta change our.
But they were fun characters in an interesting world. Yeah.
Yeah. They just made it very fun. I mean, that's a movie that, to be honest, is kind of forgettable, but it's still a fun movie. You sit through it and you enjoy it.
Anytime you can fly into a giant head.
Yeah. And they never really explain that unless you're a Marvel Comics fan. You understand why it's a giant floating head. But it's just you have to develop a world that's. I mean, Lord of the Rings. The world is part of it. That's what draws you in. The whole of Middle Earth. Star Wars. Like, I want to go to a planet where everyone is like riding a space camel, or something, right? It's kind of cool. Like, how many people weren't like thrilled when the Millennium Falcon. And was it Return of the Jedi flew out? Was it Return of the Jedi flew out of the giant space worm's mouth?
Oh, that's Empire.
Empire Strikes Back when they flew out of the giant space worm's mouth. Well, then the Sarlacc pit was kind of a disappointment initially because all it looked like was a hole in the ground with teeth that they glued into it. Ooh.
All right, are we ready to go?
Sphincter of Tatooine. All right, hiding.
Mr. Ashley, are you prepared?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
It is.
Let me just do one thing. All right. Here we go. Daily Tech News Show is powered by you, the audience. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, March 31st, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt. Chris Ashley from SMR Podcast alongside on this Friday. Good to have you, Chris.
Thank you, sir. What did it do?
Oh, I'm so glad to be headed into the weekend. It wasn't a bad week, just a long week somehow. I don't know why.
Yeah, I was traveling last week, and I was telling a story on our show last how awful it was to get back. The trip was good. The meetings were great, very productive, and then I get stuck in Canada. Last flight out after sitting in the airport for 3 hours, and then they're just like, okay. No more planes to the U.S. So we need you to spend the night, and then all the restaurants are closed. So it kind of made this week drag on. I just never recovered from it. No
kidding, man.
Yeah, man.
Not even any free Tim Hortons, nothing.
Well, here's the problem, right? So I went to Tim Hortons. There was in the airport. The only thing that was open was Tim Hortons, a place called Chicken Burger, and some kind of brewery. So we went to the brewery first, and they were like, I'm sorry to tell you that the only thing we have left are 2 burger patties and some chicken fingers. And I was like, I'm not taking the last 2 burger patties from any restaurant. So I guess we'll check out chicken fingers. Chicken fingers, you walk over there, 3 teenagers working in the back. One of them's got a bottle of sauce that's all over his fingers and all over the bottle, and they're just laughing. And I was like, oh, no, we can't eat here. So the only thing else was Tim Hortons, and then I walk up to the Tim Hortons register, and what do I see? new trainee. I was like, oh gosh, could
Can't
this
win
be
for losing.
worse? But that's why I ended up eating at Tim Hortons. Though, just grabbed a quick sandwich there.
Gotcha. Well, someday all of those jobs may be taken by robots, and that's going to be our main topic later today, is what that new trainee does in that situation. But let's start off with a few tech things you should know. Otto co-founder Anthony Lewandowski pleaded the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination in regard to documents pertaining to Waymo's lawsuit against Uber, which owns Otto. And I guess the judge said, it's not going to stop me from putting in an injunction if I want to. So this case is heating up.
Yeah, the only time Dave Chappelle has forever ruined the term "plead the fifth" for me, because if you've ever watched his skit and you see him playing the character Tron and he's in there singing "I plead the fifth,"
I'm sure that's how Anthony Lewandowski entered his plea.
That's how he did it, because that's going to be the only fun part of this for him.
Synaptics announced a new fingerprint scanner called the FS4600, capable of force-sensitive presses, swipe gestures, and support for software navigation buttons. So if Samsung had used this, they wouldn't have had to put the fingerprint sensor on the back if they didn't want to. That should be arriving in your products in Q3.
You know, early on in life, you would think, this is not a big deal. But the more I use fingerprint sensors, the more I want them everywhere. So any improvement to technology in this area is good for me, because my corporate computer, I have to type my ridiculous password to get into it. And in my Surface, I can just show my smiling face and log right in. So
isn't that great?
It's just awesome for me.
Snapchat announced Friday it's rolling out a search function for photos and videos posted publicly to our story. So this is the curated version, but they say they'll have, a few thousand pictures you can search for if you just really need to see some puppies or something.
I don't know, man. The more stuff we have online, the more avenues we have for people to search out your information. I'm sure all the private investigators are pretty happy about this.
Yeah, sure. All right, here's some more top stories. Palmer Luckey has left Facebook and therefore Oculus, the company he co-founded. In a statement to TechCrunch, Oculus said Palmer will be dearly missed. Luckey's last public statement was back on September 23rd in response to news reports about his involvement in a group supporting President Trump's campaign. Luckey did not appear at the Oculus Developer Conference in the fall. He did appear in court as part of the lawsuit brought by ZeniMax against Oculus, where he was found guilty of violating an NDA. And then in January, they named Hugo Barra as VP of VR at Facebook, with Oculus underneath him. Brendan Uribe was no longer the CEO of Oculus as of December. He's in charge of PC VR. And now, end of an era, right? Palmer Luckey out at his own company.
It's crazy that type of stuff can actually happen. But I guess at the end of the day, you got a greater responsibility to the company as opposed to yourself. But with Microsoft getting ready to launch Project Scorpio in a couple weeks, so in a couple months, well, actually announce it, which is their updated Xbox. That's kind of weird timing.
I am curious where he goes next. Basically, he's Facebook is very bad press averse, and so I kind of felt back in September, as soon as he had to do some spin control, that Mark Zuckerberg was probably going to look at a way to shuffle him quietly out of that company. He think he's a really talented guy, though, and I wonder who is going to want to be able to make use of that talent. Maybe Microsoft.
Well, maybe himself. Maybe he has his own plan.
Yeah, maybe he'll start his own thing again. That's how, he just kind of did it because he was into screens and optics and was like, hey, I think I can make VR out of this. It's a pretty great story still.
Absolutely.
Twitter has changed the default picture for new accounts from an egg to a gray gumdrop-headed human. I saw my first one just 30 minutes ago. Twitter claims the photo gives less prominence to accounts with a default profile photo. This is obviously not going to solve trolls on Twitter, but the idea is that those eggs that are often used as, people say eggs when they refer to trolls sometimes, because people will create accounts without putting an avatar. They won't be as easy to spot. They won't be as prominent. I don't know. If you really want to do that, just make it an empty box. Don't even put an avatar in there, I guess.
Yeah, or maybe stop allowing people to be anonymous on there. I don't know.
Well, there's so many other things they should do to really fight this. This isn't the thing that solves it.
No. And the fact that, that they even let this out, this is something that they should never have announced. They should have just let it happen. They're like, oh, I'm not an egg anymore.
Yeah.
Now I'm a gumdrop-headed human.
Yeah, and they made a big deal of how they tried to make it genderless, so that it's not necessarily a man or a woman. And I'm like, it's it's a
popular.
Fisher Price character. It's not.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a popular thing to do, but at the end of the day, they've got bigger problems. You know, the amount of trolling, the attacks that occur, you know, to people that say something that they disagree with. They need to really get on that.
And I believe some people are saying, "Oh, great, they spent all their time doing this." I don't think it's the same teams that are working on fixing one that they're fixing the other. But I get it. Like people want to see more progress on the other front. At the same time, I'll be honest, and this is not in relation to the troll problem at all. I will be happy to see something that very clearly is an account without an avatar. I remember when the eggs first showed up, I thought that was people picking eggs for their avatar. It was, you know, and of course I got used to it pretty quick, but this does very clearly say like no default photo to me.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
Verizon has announced the installation of a search tool called App Flash on all of its Android phones. It'll be coming in the coming weeks. The EFF notes that Verizon says on its site that the app will collect your mobile number, device identifiers, device type, operating system, list of apps you use, contacts, and location, which it will then share with advertisers. You can limit the information that the app collects, and you can opt out of targeted ads, but you cannot delete the app unless you root your Android phone.
This is one of the most disgusting things I have seen online and, you know, in the news. And it really, really bugs me about this, because the fact that they have this app ready to go right after that both the House and the Senate passed the repeal to allow people.
Wasn't even a repeal, just a block. It said these rules aren't going into place. And they're like, great. We don't have to prepare for that anymore. Boom,
boom. House, Senate. Oh, here's our new steal your information. Without telling you stuff. And unfortunately, you know, people are just not even going to know this is happening, and that's the worst part about it.
Well, and here's the thing. Verizon, the good part of this is that those 2010 transparency rules did force Verizon to put this on its website, and the EFF did its job in finding that and saying, hey, folks, this is what they say they're doing with it. So that part of the system still works. And so we know that they're doing it. They're not able to hide it. Also, I mean, I'll give them half points for allowing you to opt out. I prefer opt in. But man, putting on a collection app like this that you can't delete that's just adding insult to injury.
Yeah. How is that okay? You can opt out of targeted ads, but we still can gather the information. Why? Because they can now link that information to the other information they gather about you. You know,
and in fact, I think it was, I want to say Nick, let me find, somebody just sent an email right before the show, so I didn't have a chance to put it in the full lineup. No, Nate sent an email pointing out like, hey, don't forget Verizon is in the process of acquiring Yahoo, one of the biggest programmatic advertisers, and they already own AOL, so they can now take
makes sense, right?
All of that ISP information, cross-reference it with AOL and eventually Yahoo.
Yeah, now it makes the picture is a lot clearer, because no one really understood why is Verizon buying Yahoo?
Yeah, it's for the ads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now you got the ads, the ad platform, user information, because there's no question how much user information. We know that because they keep giving it away.
Well, here's some good news. Total U.S. retail sales from recorded music rose 11.4% to $7.7 billion, the biggest rise since 1998. Revenue from streaming services made up 51% of annual revenues for $3.9 billion. The first time that streaming services have made up the majority of revenues for the music industry, and that's a big jump, up 70% from last year. When you break those numbers down, sales from paid subscriptions more than doubled, while free ad-supported services like what you get from Pandora or YouTube rose 26%. Sales of digital downloads declined 22%. That's not a big surprise at this point. And of course, sales of CDs declined as well. You totally expect that. The RIAA, however, said they could have been bigger if we had a better deal from YouTube. And also, we still want stronger copyright laws.
They still don't get it. They just still don't get it.
They get it. They get it just fine.
Well, yeah, true that. But it's nice to see that, because you like to see companies at least from the business standpoint, like Pandora and all the streaming services, actually be successful. They came out with a new way to play music. They drove the business, and it's good. So that part of it, and you had Drake that's just broke streaming records. I think
Right.
So Nicki Minaj I think was in the list as well. So you know what, the music is there, the content is there, and people are excited. So
I want to see musicians getting their money, which
yes.
that is something that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. But overall, if the music industry is doing better, that's more money that can go to musicians, and I think that's good. I've been saying for a couple of years, like, you got to wait till streaming services get to scale before you start condemning them. Because you remember, the music industry was railing against Spotify in the early days, but now that it's starting to bring in the bucks, they're backing off on that. They just want a better deal from YouTube, so they're putting the pressure on them. They've been putting pressure on Pandora for the same thing for a long time, and that's fine. They're a business. They should be pushing for a better deal. I only get upset when they want to start changing laws, which they want to do with the DMCA. Don't change the laws just to benefit a single business that is recovering and doing well, and I think will continue to recover.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have no hope that they're not going to pass some kind of law or change some kind of law to make that happen.
No, fingers crossed. I have a shred of hope. I will have the hope for you, Chris.
Thank you. I'm going to use your hope and raise my hope level up a finger.
All right. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission has rejected an application by 4 banks to collectively negotiate with Apple over access to its NFC controller for payment applications. Why? Well, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Westpac Banking Corporation, National Australia Bank, and Bendigo and Adelaide Bank wanted to team up so that they could pressure Apple to let them create their own payment system for iOS. In other words, they said, please let us collude so that we can force Apple to let us make our own Apple Pay. They didn't want to have to use Apple Pay. The ACCC chairman, Rod Sims, ruled that such a move would reduce competition on several fronts. So now the banks are all going to have to negotiate individually.
Right. So good, because as much as, I don't necessarily defend Apple every chance I get at all. But you know what? They got technology. They invented it. Well, they invented it for their device, how it wanted it to work. They made it popular. And now, hey, give us what you got, or allow us access to what you got so we can do our own thing. No, I'm not feeling that at all.
Well, I mean, I get it where it's like, hey, Apple has a monopoly over Apple Pay because that's the way Apple works, right? It's got that vertical system. But if these 4 banks start to throw their weight around together, they might be able to force that to happen. And certainly if they can get Apple to do it, it would be easy to move it over to Android. And then suddenly they're dominating the payment system in Australia, which is why Rod Sims said, yeah, no, there's a few different ways that this reduces competition. So I don't think we're going to allow it.
Look, why don't these guys figure out how to make the little credit card readers all have the same display information? Why don't you guys work on that first? Because sometimes you got to push the green button to go to credit. Otherwise, you got to skip it. Yeah. Some machines now show debit twice, and you're supposed to figure out which one is credit. Figure that stuff out first. Leave
that. I'll say everybody else. It's probably a U.S. centric problem, not an Australia problem, because they've been on chip and pin for years. But sure. I'm totally with you. If you want to get all the tech headlines each day in less than 5 minutes, folks, you can subscribe to our sister show, and I highly encourage you to do so. DailyTechHeadlines.com. So Rob Locascio is the founder and CEO of a company called LivePerson. He was somebody who was working with web chat for customer service back in the late 90s. He's been doing this for a long time. And he has a guest column on TechCrunch that says in the title, we need a new deal to address the economic risks of automation. And I'm gonna break down his reasoning here, Chris, but this is something I think a lot of people are thinking, which is, hey, I love the idea of automation for self-driving cars, for robots doing things more efficiently, for AI chatbots that help me do things, but is that going to put me out of work?
Right. It's this is such a multifaceted thing to think about because it gets into some of the fears that a lot of people have around introducing socialism or more social programs into the into the current economy. But you can't just do things that take away people's jobs and then just be like, good luck to you. So, I'm for automation because obviously it increases efficiency, it says you get technological breakthroughs. But man, I like the idea that they introduced in this article about how they should go about at least addressing it.
Yeah, let's take a look at what he says. First, he lays out that 40 to 50% of tasks performed in customer care fall into a category that is highly susceptible to automation. This is the industry he's in, so he watches this very closely. He estimates about 3 million people in the U.S. are employed in call centers. So, not every single one of them would be out of a job, but a big percent, 40 to 50% could be. Other sectors that could be affected by this, truck and taxi drivers. We've talked about that before. Cashiers, security guards, retail clerks, obviously manufacturing jobs already subject to replacement by automation, and that's not going to get better in this situation. He believes millions of Americans would face unemployment within the next decade, and though new jobs are created as old jobs are automated, the problem is displacement of workers. Many can't retrain because they're in a low-wage job where they don't have the resources to save up a lot of money to pay for retraining in a new career. They certainly can't go retrain in their off time because they're spending all their time working. So we're going to be in a situation where we have a lot of low-skill, low-pay jobs and high-skill, high-pay jobs. And that middle is what you keep hearing people talking about, right, is where this is getting eaten up.
So let me just ask you directly, because what do you think of the idea to tax these companies that are bringing in these automation machines? Because personally, I think it should happen, because as it stands today, we do a lot for companies, and rightly or wrong, whichever side you fall on, you can't just pull. Well, I guess they could pull money out of nowhere. We've seen that before. But at the end of the day,
it's hard. Yeah.
We need to take care of people. We need to get better about taking care of people. And so I'm okay with the taxing of this to help offset, and maybe that creates education programs where these folks can go to and retrain. Maybe it actually pays these people and creates new revenue streams to pay people. I don't know if it's all out, just, sit there and let's just collect money. I'm never down for that aspect of it, but I'm okay with this. Where do you fall?
Yeah, well, there's three solutions that Locatio mentions, one of which is his own. Bill Gates is advocating what you're saying, taxing automated services to slow down the rollout, which would slow down the impact and give time to retrain people using those tax funds. Elon Musk says just do universal basic income. He's one of those guys who's like, let's just give everybody $10,000 a year. There's a lot of studies still being done on whether that would actually help, and there's no clear evidence that it would or it wouldn't. So that's a pretty murky situation. You can have a lot of opinions about that. Locatio is calling for a preemptive New Deal. He says, go Roosevelt on this before we get the Depression. Fund education and retraining programs in cooperation with employers that have jobs, and encourage software platforms that require human input. Get people to create startups that require humans who are better at things like design, creativity, empathy, judgment. He says, lean into what we've seen with things like Etsy and organic farming, where something that got automated in a huge amount, manufacturing and farming, had a resurgence for the human touch on things. I worry that a tax, if not very carefully implemented, could actually slow down the rollout of automation too much, because what you're talking about here is you're going to make, if it all works out right, what I believe is down the road, it's going to be better for everyone because you're going to have more efficient ways and raise productivity. But what you have to address is the displacement. It's not that we're going to lose jobs. I feel like we're going to make enough new jobs, but you're going to displace people. So I have a job at a call center. My call center job goes away. I'm not trained, or maybe I'm not even the right location. Maybe my call center job is up in Wisconsin, and all the jobs that I think I could get to take its place are out in California. Do I have the money to move to California and join the tech circle out there? Maybe not. So that's where I think, maybe a precise tax on output, or maybe there's a more creative way to do it that then funds people who can retrain, maybe even move in certain cases to take new jobs. I think that's essential. I think you have to have a plan for that, because the disruption is going to come fast and it's going to come big, and it will work out over the long term, but you need to have something to help people make that transition?
Yeah, so essentially some degree of a combination of some of the proposals that were in this article, which I think makes the most sense, because you're definitely going to need to come up with the money for the training, for relocation, as you just mentioned. And, where else are you going to get it but from the people that are benefiting from that's the same situation that's creating the displacement.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, we don't want, you're right, it has to be intricate enough not to slow down progress.
You don't want to kill the industry that's creating the new jobs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I'm glad it's not my problem.
Right? No kidding.
But it's just such a strange time, because for folks like us that are super into technology, we want to see these things, but the compassionate side, you realize there is a serious detriment to these things as well. So as long as the biggest overall thing is, now is the time to start being proactive.
Yes.
On how we address the situation. And I think that's the best part about this, the whole discussion.
There's a New York Times article that just came out today that researchers at MIT and Boston University, using real world data to do a study, found there isn't a lot of employment increase to offset jobs lost in manufacturing right now due to automation. And part of that is geography. Where the jobs are not created in the location where the people in manufacturing lose their jobs. But even when you kind of factor that out, there's still not a huge increase in the jobs yet. And so that is the thing you need to look at too, to say, okay, how do we find ways to get people into the new situations that they could take? Because what they're saying is not there are a loss of jobs. They're saying there's not jobs that these people who lose their jobs can get.
Right. Yeah. And so the only way around that is education and training. And so that's why I never understand, especially for people coming up, because, we're pretty much, for the most part, set in our industries and what we're doing. But the people coming up, the kids coming up, are the ones going to be in trouble. And so I just never understand when there are proposals to help pay for education to get, and it's just like, no, we can't do that. Everybody. And it's like, you have to look at the bigger picture. We have these big part of middle America that where all these jobs are going, even for the folks that are shipping jobs overseas, it's really the same thing. You ship the jobs overseas, and then all of a sudden you create this vacuum of folks that don't have anything to do. And a lot of these jobs that they decided, in that whole car manufacturer, they said, okay, we won't ship them all, but they're still automating. So there's like, the problem's not solved. It's just delayed.
Well, and MIT and Boston study that I mentioned tried to look and say, well, is the problem really, outsourcing and overseas? And they're like, that has virtually no effect. It's mostly automation from what they can tell. That's the bigger threat. So, and like you say, it's not just kids who may not be getting the education they need to move into these careers. That's a huge problem. It's also the adults. If I'm close to retirement age, I'm in my 50s, and I've been doing one job for the most part all my life, and suddenly you're like, hey, don't you want to become a gig employee, on dogvacay.com doing dog walking? And it's like, no, that's not what I want to do.
No, I've got a couple years left of work. I'm definitely not trying to do that.
Yeah.
I'm excellent at putting these parts on this other part, and then creating something, creating a car.
Yeah.
And so, so it's just, man, I just don't. I'm not seeing the happy ending that we would like to see, at least at this point. But at least, again, I'm happy that the conversation is happening. But
and I know some people say, well, hold on, I don't want taxes to go up. Do we need? The government spends too much money as it is. However, the government is going to spend more money if we don't have a plan for this, because you will spend money on people who get thrown out of work and are unemployed because they'll get sick, and that'll put a burden on the government system. You'll also lose tax money if you have a bunch of people sitting around idle instead of productively working at jobs. So you want to make sure you get them into jobs so that then you're creating money that actually brings in tax revenue without raising taxes. So spending a little bit in the right way, that's the trick. That's what Chris and I are both saying. We're not have the answers, but spending money in the right way saves you a lot of money down the road.
Yeah, and there's no question that once you create these areas that are now poverty stricken and all these folks are now disenfranchised and uneducated, certainly crime is going to start going up, and the folks will definitely turn to that as a means to make money. So whether you want to invest to help educate the kids for the future, you want to help invest to keep the streets safe, and you can't look at this as any way as a bad thing. Finding the money and then creating these avenues for folks to get out of these situations that are already here, but we're not near the peak of it yet at all.
And that's the trick, right? Making sure you spend the money on a program that fixes these problems, that prevents these problems, and that's where the rubber meets the road, because people have lost faith that can happen. So we're early enough that folks like Locasio are making the call saying we need to start figuring this out, but we're also early enough that nobody's really figured out what that actual solution would look like yet.
Absolutely. And I don't want to hear anything about no bootstraps either. Don't want to hear about bootstraps. Picking ourselves by the bootstraps.
Yeah, bootstraps are like buggy whips, aren't they? Like that's a 19th century technology.
You love to hear. Oh, pick yourself by the
I don't got any boots around that have straps.
I'm wearing Timbs, no straps.
Yeah. Hey, thanks to all those who participate in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Got an email here from Patrick in sunny but still a bit too chilly Paris, who says, hey, Tom, Chris, Len, and Roger. And by the way, if you're wondering where Len is, he had a family thing come up, so he couldn't be with us, but we do miss him, and hopefully he'll be back next week. Patrick writes, longtime listener and scarf-wearing co-host. Well, this is Patrick Beja writing into the show that he co-hosts on Tuesdays. He says, one last note about the ISP's FCC privacy thing. I believe one key element of that whole situation that has gone greatly unreported, ISPs argue that they should be treated fairly and be afforded the same conditions as internet services like Google and Facebook. That might sound reasonable at first, but we should remember that ISPs are already getting paid for the service they provide, whereas Google and Facebook are not. If they want to play by the same rules, maybe they can start offering free internet access to everyone in the country. I won't hold my breath. That's obviously a joke, but it shows that they can't have it both ways. Well, okay, actually, I guess they can. What I mean is I don't think they should. As Nilay Patel put it in a video on The Verge, this means we're paying ISPs so they can also sell our data. Talk about adding insult to injury makes very little sense. I could go on about the ideas that, but we'll get cheaper internet because of the added revenue stream. And sure, we might if there was a reasonable amount of competition, but those have been talked to death, so I'll stop there. Hugs to y'all, Patrick in Paris.
Well, that's a great point, right? Because that was one of the major arguments that was used in this whole thing in the first place, was the fact that they were saying, well, Google and, all these other guys, they don't have to do this. So why do we have to do it? And they went the complete wrong direction. They said, okay, well, you don't have to do it. No, everybody should have to, do it. That was the right direction to go to. But clearly this was a money grab. And I forget which senator it was that was speaking. I think it was 2 days ago when they were about to pass this thing. And he was just like, what do they need to know what kind of underwear I'm wearing? It was hilarious, but he was making great points. He was saying, we should have made the rule for everybody, not relax the rule. And this,
well, and that was my point yesterday is maybe the rules the FCC were going to put in place weren't the best, but then come up with what are the appropriate rules for your privacy
and apply them to everybody who has an opportunity to gather data. Don't just say, nah, you don't need this. This is a terrible, terrible thing.
Kevin from Spring is Really Here, Tennessee, actually had an idea. What if Google reveals a feature called GPN, the Google Private Network? So when you're doing a search, there'd be your traditional links, but then an added feature would be a GPN link that Google would fetch and run through a secure tunnel like a VPN. Google has had all my information for over a decade, he writes, and I have yet to have a negative consequence for that, for better or worse. I trust them more than I trust my ISP.
No.
You're not buying it, huh?
No, they're part of the problem. They're doing the same thing. They're gathering data. Yes, I get you want a VPN, not a GPN, for sure. And who's gonna be the next VPN provider and build those things right into routers that they sell. But the reality is, Google, if you have to trust that why would Google allow you to encrypt the information that they need?
It kind of goes against their business model.
Right.
It's a brilliant idea, and I could almost see Google doing it, because sometimes they will do things that go against their business model because they know it, creates warm, fuzzy feelings with people. But
Yeah.
Finally, Will in cloudy, wait, no, rainy, wait, no, sunny Dublin writes, he's been meaning to email since I spoke of planned meetups back around St. Patrick's Day, that on the first Thursday of every month, a selection of people who could best be described as your listener base meet up for pints and chats in Dublin. It's a great group of like-minded people, and anyone who follows your show would fit right in. They meet in the Magpie Inn, Dalkey, Dublin, from around 8 p.m. For a few hours. That's the first Thursday of every month, and we'll have details and some links in the show notes as well. So if we got anybody out there in Dublin looking for some like-minded folks to share a pint with, made me really jealous when he sent me a picture of the Guinness he was having today. I'd love to go join them as well one of these days. Maybe I'll get over there. But the Magpie Inn, Dalkey, Dublin, 8 p.m. first Thursday of every month. Look for Will.
Awesome. That's awesome. Isn't it awesome when fans meet up with other fans and then they become friends? Man, it's just awesome.
Yeah.
Plus, good for you guys.
Sounds great. Well, good for you too. Thanks for joining us. You're one of us now.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah. Tell folks about the SMR podcast and what they can find there.
Hey, you can always check me out and my two buddies on the SMR podcast, Mr. Rod Simmons and Mr. Rob Dunwood. Every week we record a show. Talking tech, we might get into a little bit of politics from a tech standpoint. We all work in the software industry, so we have our own takes on it. And it's just a funny show and a fun show to listen to. When you listen, you have to feel like one of the guys, one of the pals in here. So come check us out on smrpodcast.com.
smrpodcast.com. Thanks to everybody who gives a little value back to this show for the value they get for it, keeping us loud, live, and independent, as Brian Brushwood likes to say. Jeff Larkin, Brian, Nelson Guillen, and many, many more. You guys are the best. Patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. On Monday, we'll be back with Veronica Belmont. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show, Chris.
Thank you so much, man. That was a lot of fun.
That was fun. I had fun too.
All right, let me get to Showbot titles. So
what do we got? Showbot.tv.
Showbot.tv. SHOWBOT.TV. Top is more spying on the Verizon.
I like Verizon. Yeah.
Twitter takes its eggs out of the basket.
Oh.
The Twitter and egg problem.
Which came first?
The Modern New Deal, New Deal 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Electric Boogaloo. That is New Deal.
That might be the leader. Keep going.
Oh my.
Verspisen. Facebook gets unlucky. No more lucky at Facebook. There's not as many titles typically.
Yeah, I think they had a hard time getting Showbot up and running today, but at least they got it running. So that's good.
My vote goes to Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I voted for it too.
Oh man. So you got big plans this weekend, Tom?
Yeah, well, we got a new dog.
Oh man.
So we're going to be hanging out with the dog. She's a German Shepherd mix.
Okay.
We're calling her Ray. She's right down there right now, sleeping. She's my production assistant. So we're going to be hanging out with the dog. And my wife just text messaged me like just this second. She's at WonderCon for work. She said, I bought Sawyer a bow tie. Sawyer's our other dog.
Oh, geez.
And he's black with white on the front. So
Uh-huh.
we've been joking that he needed a bow tie for a long time.
Right, to go with his tux.
So I guess we're gonna dress up Sawyer in a bow tie and hang around with the dogs. What about
That's
you?
great. I just I gotta get my cleaning lady out here so that when the wife comes home, she comes home.
Oh, it's like, where's the wife?
Yes, spoiler. She's in California actually.
Oh, really? Where
she's
is
out
she in
there.
San Francisco or something?
Where did she go?
You don't know.
Yeah, I'm
She
the
just
worst.
goes,
I'm the worst. I was just like, I was like, okay, have a good trip. But she's out there. She works for a company that does like drug inventions. Like she used to work for AstraZeneca and
They're like a pharmaceutical company. Okay.
yeah. And she went to a smaller one. And
Nice.
so she's out there for a convention and training and all that stuff. So, so it's just, I got to find something. I'm definitely because I've been gone. I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago. That's why I couldn't catch up with you guys. And then, and then Canada last week. So I am definitely firing up this.
Man, you've been traveling around.
Yeah, it's been, I guess, when the economy's down, everybody knuckles up. If you can't do it on web, on the web, you got to have a good reason to travel. But, they've kind of loosened up the pockets a little bit. So
that's good.
If
that's a good
go
sign.
yeah, of course. So, it's like you need to go see somebody, go see them. So, yeah. So I'm, taking advantage of it.
all right. The New Deal 2 Electric Boogaloo is at the top right now.
I'm good with that.
All right.
I think that should
All
be
right,
the
cool.
awesome. All right, I'm gonna jump out of here. I gotta take my little baby girl to gymnastics. I so appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh yeah,
I
thanks for
really
coming back,
enjoy it.
man. It's always good having you.
Anytime you want me, I'm here.
Cool.
Absolutely. You know what? I want to get you and the Robs on one of my roundtable shows that I do once a month too. We'll figure that out.
Oh, let's figure it out. Rob and Rod, let's do it.
Yeah.
All
That'll be
right,
fun.
great.
All
All
right.
right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Bye.
See.
So yes, New Deal 2 Electric Boogaloo has been chosen, and I'm putting it in the ID3 tag.
Well, we're in that transition period. A lot of people. I mean, none of these things ever go smoothly. I mean, that's just the nature of how.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about his column, because I think he's right about we need to decide. We need to decide ahead of time. I don't really have a lot of faith that we will, but he's right that we should. And whether he's right about a new deal or whether it's some other solution that somebody has yet to come up with, we need to start putting our brains against it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's definitely something worth planning.
Yeah. Because I don't believe that the robots will take all our jobs and we'll be stuck without jobs and it'll be no, the whole point of the robots and automation is it increases abundance for everyone. What is important is to make sure that everyone can share in those resources, in that new abundance.
Yeah, and I mean, you're intersecting so many issues, and it remains to be seen generally how this will play out. I mean, if everyone was, Sister Teresa or Mother Teresa. Sister Teresa is my teacher from Catholic school.
I guess
Mother
Teresa was a sister at some point, right? Yeah. Anyway.
Mother Teresa. Yeah, I'm sure that could probably work, but not everyone thinks that way or will think that way.
Yeah.
Some people still very much have and
it's tricky because the people are like, don't use government tax money for this. They have a point, which is because it will be wasted, right? The assumption is because it won't work, it'll be wasted, it'll be mismanaged, and you don't want that. That is the opposite of what you want. That doesn't mean the government isn't the right way to do it. It just means you have to make sure that it's done right somehow, or maybe there's another way to ensure that it's done right. That's a public-private partnership. I don't know. I'm very attracted to the idea of basic income. I have yet to see the evidence that says it will work. And that's the tricky part of it. There's some evidence says it will. There's some evidence says it doesn't. And you can come up with a lot of common sense reasons why it would or would not work. But until we actually see it working somewhere, I'm not going to get too enthusiastic about it.
And maybe it might not just be basic income is not just a straight monetary transfer kind of thing. I mean, colonial expansion worked for one good reason. There were a surplus of people.
Yeah.
Right? It's
but not doing anything will cost you more.
Yes.
That's
No.
the-
I'm not saying.
No, I know. I'm just saying that to the audience, not to you.
Well, yeah. When basic. Yes and no. I mean, it's the same
Yes
argument
and no
against. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking to the chat room again. JPEG, JPEG. His question or her question is: wouldn't basic income devalue the dollar? Less incentive to work and lower wages.
There is evidence that it doesn't give you less incentive to work. That it's because it's only just enough to feed and clothe you that people still want to find work. So yeah, that's one of those like, well, common sense says if I'm making some money, but if you have it at the right level, you still want to work because you want a better life. And so it doesn't disincentivize work. But then there's some other evidence that says, yeah, but for a certain section of the population, they actually, it does stop them from continuing to work. So there may be something to that.
The devil's advocate in me would say, and this is the jerky kind of a-holy part of me, would say, maybe the premise of the whole thing is wrong. Does everyone need to be brought on board? Does it, at what point do you cut your losses?
What are you saying? There's let people die? I don't quite understand what
Perhaps. I don't know. It's not so much that, but it's we're working on this is probably an East meets West thing, but we're working on the assumption that everyone needs to be brought on board. Everyone needs to be saved.
I don't know what you mean by brought on board.
Like as part of society, everyone should be taken care of. What if you don't believe that?
Oh, you mean like just let people starve?
Yes, fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good plan. I disagree with that plan. I think that's the whole point of having a civilization is that you don't let that happen.
We shall see.
I believe in universal human rights.
We shall see.
Maybe. What do you mean we shall see? I'm saying what I believe in. That's not a we shall see situation.
I know. I'm being the jerk. We shall see. As I stroke my non-existent beard.
I mean, honestly, if you don't believe that everyone has a right to, a certain level of existence, then you just go out and kill everyone, right?
Isn't that the whole point?
That'll solve a problem. That's the Lyndon LaRouche plan.
Well, that was kind of the British plan for the longest time. Join the military.
Yeah. No, I think that's horrible. I think that's unconscionable.
Unconscionable.
There are very few things I would condemn. That would be a thing I would condemn. Man, you brought us to a dark place, Roger.
How did I bring us to a dark place?
You said like maybe people should just die. You got all Ebenezer Scrooge. If they should die, they better do it and decrease the surplus population. No, I don't think that's the solution. I don't believe you think that's the solution. But
I just said I'm playing devil's advocate.
I know. That you really were advocating for the devil with that one though. Extremist.
It's
the Pol Pot solution.
Extremist beef. Like, is that like really like sour and spicy tasting beef jerky?
Yeah, maybe like the super spicy Slim Jims.
Snap him to a Slim Jim. That's just motor oil, really.
Hey, so I'm going to talk about this more on Monday, but Monday is episode 3000, which gets people really excited, right? Like, oh, the 3000th episode. It's not actually the 3000th episode of Daily Tech News Show. If many of you already know this, but when we started Daily Tech News Show, Darren Kitchen suggested, he's like, what if instead of starting with episode 1, you combine the number of episodes you did at Buzz Out Loud with the number of episodes you did at Tech News Today, and then add 1, and that's the number of the first episode of Daily Tech News Show. So that's what I did. It isn't even an accurate estimate of the number of daily news shows that I've done because there were several Tech News Todays and Buzz Out Louds that are counted in that number that I wasn't on because I was on vacation or out sick or whatever. But it's, people like round numbers. So on Monday, we will note that it is at the episode 3000, not the 3000th episode though. kind of a fine line to draw there.
Fine line like fine wine.
Well, thanks everybody for watching and listening. We will be back for episode 3000. Maybe we can get like all the Mystery Science Theater people to come on. Probably can't. Bye.